Welcome everyone to Chiefs Digest Live. Here we are on schedule release night, and I am very happy to have alongside me good friend Cody Tapp. And Cody, it's only appropriate that we're kind of kicking off the 2024 season here, talking about the Chiefs schedule, considering we ended the 2023 season together in Las Vegas on the field.
It's true.
After the game.
That was like right before I was leaving for the airport. I mean, I went straight from there to an Uber to the airport to take a red eye. So that would have been the very tail end of the season, barring, celebratory stuff.
And here we are kicking it off all once again. We now know what the Chiefs schedule will be in their attempt to run it back again in quest of a third Lombardi trophy. And kind of just curious, I want to start off with kind of your observations. What stands out to you about the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that we knew were maybe probably coming. Obviously, the most egregious thing is TV partners want the Chiefs on so damn bad that it just wrecked the back end of their schedule. It stinks. And look, I feel like I'm the only person who's mentioning this. They're partially to blame, not because of their success, but because Clark Hunt plays ball. Clark Hunt likes to do things for the league that are good for the league. And so I think sometimes he agrees to these, sure, we'll be on Saturday. Yeah, we'll be on the Netflix game, because he knows it's kind of a big, long game. And so I think sometimes they get stuck in these as a result of that. But that stretch of they have to play on the 15th, they have to play on the 21st, and they have to play on the 25th, that stinks. And it presents, I think, Matt, maybe the biggest problem that people aren't talking about, depending on where they are, is so they have to go through that stretch anyway, and two of those games are on the road. They got to be on the road, then back at home for a little bit, then back on the road against Pittsburgh before finishing on the road. Is what happens if they're really good and they lock up the number 1 seed? Do they take the 25th through the 12th off? Or they're just locked into the 2 seed or the 3 seed? What do they do with like a 9-day layoff before their final week of the season, where they've notoriously kind of rested guys, and maybe week 1 of the playoffs, maybe week 2 of the playoffs? It's just, that part of the schedule stands out because it stinks. It's the worst part by far.
I mean, it's still a lot. I mean, amazingly enough, it's still a lot of TV games and national games. And honestly, I mean, if the Browns are a decent team, that's right now a noon kickoff on a Sunday. I have not looked at what the Sunday night game is that week, but it could certainly be flexed if that game's a terrible, terrible game.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting into it now, so I haven't even looked at the days of rest, but I will say, I mean, that's one thing at least that the Christmas Day short session doesn't bother me at all as if I'm the Chiefs, because one, every team that you're playing there is on the exact same amount of rest, so nobody has an advantage or a disadvantage, especially on the Christmas Day game against the Steelers. I mean, you're doing the only disadvantage you've got at the Chiefs is that you're going on the road. It's a slight disadvantage, but to me, you're right. I mean, the Chiefs probably would have to end up playing people in Week 18, regardless of whether or not they have a bye wrapped up, because you just don't want people that tired, laid off. I mean, that much rust on guys. But at the same time, I mean, if the Chiefs don't and they have to play in the wild card round, and now you got a mini bye at the end of the season, nice. That's a tremendous advantage.
Well, for a team that needed, so the team needed a break. I think that's what I don't like about it, and I can see, I guess it ends up working in your advantage, but for a team that's played like a full season now, more games than pretty much every other team in the league over the last 4 years, to have to play 3 games in 10 days, 2 weeks before the postseason starts, is like, oh, what a slog. You're right. I haven't looked at the net rest either. And I think more people, the closer they paid attention to the league, have been caring about that. They've got, this schedule's just funky, because I think what we figured out is, because again, so much of this, I think their schedule is driven by the TV more than anyone else's. They have 8 standalone games. So you're like, well, they only have like 5 primetime games. You're like, no, they have 8 games that are like literally just theirs. The first game of the season, the noon on Christmas, the Saturday one, like they're on a bunch of just the Black Friday one.
Yep.
They put the Chiefs, half of their schedule is in, this is the only team you can physically watch at this time. There's no other football to consume. It is just Kansas City. And I think it's just some combination of Travis Kelce's popularity, the team's back-to-back Super Bowl champions, and Patrick Mahomes. I also think, I know people don't like to hear this, it is not an accident that Taylor Swift brings more eyes, and more people want those eyes. And the fact that they're on the first Netflix game and are on one of the first 2 ever Black Friday games, and I don't think those are accidents, Matt, do you?
No, they're not accidents at all. And and there's two other games between in week 2 against Cincinnati, and I'm trying to see. I guess that would be week 11 against Buffalo at Buffalo. Those are those 325 CBS games, which are going to be those are going to be alone games. I mean, the only thing they're going to be going up against is probably a individual game on Fox that's going to be in 2 local markets. I mean, those are going to be in 95% of the country.
Yep.
So you're really talking about 10 nationally televised games for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, which are just on your own. And look, that's fine. The Chiefs don't mind playing in that kind of prime time. The prime time game stuff, of course, they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions. They got, they're riding the high of that. It makes sense. The other, because I was like, really, like when you go through it, other than net rest, which I don't want to dive in too much, I think there's 2 big advantages for them in the schedule where I would tell you I'm complaining about the later part. I think there's 2 early advantages. They get 10 days before, they get unlimited time to take on the Ravens, as much time as they want to prepare for the Ravens. So that's as good as a bye. Then they get 10 full days. So they get like extra time to prepare for Cincinnati, another advantage. And they have their bye week before San Francisco. So some of their more difficult opponents, that's 3 of probably the 4 hardest games, 3 of the hardest 5 games they have in the schedule. They'll have the rest advantage there. They'll all early, but they'll have the planning advantage, the rest advantage. They'll have everything working in their favor, at least in the early part, right?
They absolutely will, and I'm pulling it up now to see what the 49ers have the week before that game. Let's see. They have they have Seattle on a Thursday night on the 10th.
Oh, so they get a little bit of a break.
They
Not
get
a full amount as Kansas City.
Not a full amount, but they'll have 10 days, whereas the Chiefs will have 13 days. So the Chiefs have a little bit more time. But that is at Seattle. I mean, that's not a terribly, terribly bad trip for San Francisco.
No.
But it could be a whole lot worse. But the Chiefs are going to have come off the bye. I mean, they're still going to have the advantage in that.
Can you explain to me why so many of their primetime games are against the NFC South? They had all these choices, and they're like, why am I watching Monday night against the Bucks and like the Saints, or like what the hell's going on here? Why am I watching NFC South teams?
I had been making jokes about that. I knew the Carolina game, either the Chiefs needed to play Carolina in Germany, which I still think probably would have been a great game for the NFL and for the Chiefs and for everybody involved, because Giants against the Panthers might set the NFL back 20 years in Europe.
But they don't care. It's the second game ever in Germany, so they're just like, they'll watch anything. They did that to London for a while, if you remember.
Yep.
It was like Jags and Badge Jets teams for a while there, admittedly.
Oh yeah, they still get. I mean, the Jags are still playing 2 games in London and still trying to make that work. But so the Panthers game at noon makes total sense. But I was joking about the Falcons game being at noon too. They put that at 7:20 on a Sunday night. It speaks to the power of Mahomes that they think that Mahomes and the Chiefs will make people watch that game, because I don't think it sounds like that appetizing of a contest. I mean, if you're really excited about Mahomes and Kirk Cousins, I guess.
Then it's like the whole Kirk Cousins and prime time part of it, and then like, I don't know, it's like he won't even like fully have been in the offense it feels early for that game. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. It feels really early for that game. I hate the early bye, by the way, of course.
Every bye is terrible for everybody.
It's way too early.
It's way too early.
It's their earliest bye since 2016. And look, sometimes you just got to wear it.
They have been fortunate with all of these week 10, week 12 buys. So they've been fortunate that they hadn't had an early bye.
I know that they wouldn't do it for financial reasons, but this is where Joe Burrow was actually right. The league probably doesn't want to admit it, and I think most people in Kansas City don't admit it. Joe Burrow said that if you go to 18 games, just give us a down week. It's shutdown week. There's no football. And honest to God, you don't even have to do it that way. Just make it half a shutdown week, each of the 2 late. One half of the league is off. The next week, the other half of the league is off. Sure, the noon slate's only got a couple of games in it. Sure, the 325, sure, they've only got a couple of games in them. You can still keep all the prime time. You just shut down half the league if you're going to 18 games would make the most sense. So the early bye does stink. And then, I think one thing I pointed out to you before we come on this thing is they front-loaded the hell out of the NFC team, didn't they? There is only one single NFC team on their schedule after week 10. So for the final 8-9 weeks, They will take on the Panthers in week 12, 9 weeks, and then every other one will be an AFC opponent. All 3 divisional teams, including the Broncos twice, Texans, Browns, Bills. It's just all AFC teams. I'm guessing they're trying to make it kind of a dogfight there for like whenever that 1 seed conversation comes up, but it's pretty backloaded in the AFC.
Yeah, and I'll give a little bit of a promo to this for our Sunday podcast with Nick and I over on the 41 is the Mic. We're going to be talking with Charlotte Carey, who is one of the 4 people in scheduling and broadcasting for the NFL. And one of the things I do want to ask her specifically is about the Christmas schedule, because they make a lot of a big deal about the computer scheduling, and they go through the computer models and see what the computer kicks out. But for me, like Christmas, did they just pick which teams that they wanted on the Christmas schedule, and that wasn't a computer model. That was literally the NFL saying, no, we want the Chiefs on Christmas. So give us the schedule, the best schedule that has the Chiefs on Christmas.
Put them on for the second straight year, too. By the way, last year's Christmas game, nobody had a happy holiday, man.
No, they phoned that one in. But it was, I guess, it was a good thing. And, the narrative of the season, and that it woke them up before the end of the season.
Well, and it also means, I think this year, the odds of the Raiders beating the Chiefs this year is like 0.005%. Yeah. They are going to, just like that year after they drove the bus through Arrowhead, they're going to stomp the Raiders just to make a point. Like, you just know that they're going to be out for blood specifically against that team this year. That won't be the divisional game they lose. It's not going to be either Raiders game. They'll take it out on them.
And they will probably try and do it. They'll probably do it both times, but they'll definitely want to do it on that Friday when everybody is watching on Amazon Prime. They will absolutely want to pants the Raiders. So
yeah, make a statement. And look, honestly, that's a short week game too, right? Because it's on a Friday versus the Sunday game. Well, at least the Sunday before is the Panthers. How much prep do you need to do for that one? You're probably fine. And look, maybe you can look it up, Matt, because that's the stretch where they're having to play a lot of games. They'll get at least 2 extra days, hypothetically, if the Chargers aren't on a bye, on them too. They'll get more net rest, and they'll get more preparation time for a big divisional game.
That is true.
Unless the Chargers are off on week 13. I don't have their schedule in front of me.
Let's see if I can't look their schedule up real quick. You think I'd be able to do these things? I'm going to throw out another thing, too, while I'm pulling this up. After week 2, when the Chiefs host the Bengals, and that's September 15th, mind you. September 15th, they play the Saints on October 7th. Their next home game is November 4th. They go 50 days with one game at Arrowhead. And basically they have one game in October. For a month and a half, they have one game. And honestly, it's great weather. I would want to go, if I'm a fan, I want to go watch games in late September and early October because the weather's decent in Arrowhead.
Yeah. Versus what we saw last year where people were losing toes.
For 50 days, you're going to have one night game as the only game at Arrowhead.
Man, that's crazy. You know what it is that I hadn't thought about it, but now that I'm looking at the schedule, do you realize how many cold weather road games they're going to play? Started in November. Yeah. November week 11, Buffalo. What do you think November in Buffalo's like? It's not pleasant.
No.
And then December in Cleveland, also a nightmare.
Not good.
December in Pittsburgh, that stinks. And December in Denver. So for that back half of the season, they're not afraid to put Patrick Mahomes in some potential snow games or cold weather games or anything else in between.
And how lucky do they get though with the one home game that 2 home games in the 2 home games that they've got in December, the Los Chargers and the Houston Texans. A dome team and another dome team.
Yeah, that is kind of nice.
In Southern California.
By that time, they'll be more than comfortable, and they take on the Raiders in late November at home. So, they're just going to do nothing but play in cold weather from November 17th all the way through the rest of the postseason, apparently.
And the Chargers, good grief, is this? Let's see. They don't mark it very well. Oh, there we go. The Chargers, before that Chiefs game on December 8th, the week before, they play at Atlanta, which is, it's on Sunday, December 1st, so they will have less rest than the Chiefs. And they're also flying across 3 time zones.
Ooh, well, I like it. Look, I'll be honest. That's it's weird to break it down this way, but if NFL execs, Matt, tell you that these things matter, then they matter. Like they know just like we know. That's why Andy is a stickler for his schedule. And he does it that way because he's trying to at least reduce the least amount of variance possible. Like you can't get rid of all of it. That's impossible. But if like the days of the week suggest this is a Wednesday, well then it's a Wednesday. Like whether we like it or not, no matter what day of week it is, the install is going to feel the same or this is going to feel the same. It just is what it is. And we're just going to operate that way. He has an advantage in that because like having to have shorter rest and then fly across 3 time zones for the Chargers, that hurts them. It just does. They also, by the way, I assume you saw this earlier. I think was it Schefter that sent it out? Someone sent it out before the schedule was out. The Chargers travel more than any other team in the league this year. Yes. They traveled like 30,000 air miles or something this year. The Chiefs traveled 10. And look, I'm assuming they got an international game that's part of it, but still, that's a big difference between the Chiefs.
Well, it's another byproduct of the fact that the AFC West is playing the AFC North and the NFC South. So the Chargers have 6 Eastern time zones trips that they have to make just on those games alone. So, I mean, it's kind of a quirk of the schedule. I mean, I'm almost surprised that the NFL hasn't figured that one out because the Raiders kind of face the same problem.
Factor that in?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess I get it that it's worse because I guess the Raiders are in the mountain. No, they're in the Pacific. Las Vegas in the Pacific. I always get a little fuzzy on where's Las Vegas in the time zone map. I guess it's not quite as bad for the Broncos, but still a couple of time zones. But yeah, that one I think is a rough one for the Chargers. I mean, taken as a whole, I mean, it is a difficult schedule. One, because there are some difficult teams, but there are some challenges to this. I mean, what do you we've talked about some of them already, but what do you feel is the biggest challenges of? Is it the front-loaded first couple of weeks of the season? Yeah. Is it, having some, stretches of road games? Is it the back end when you're playing some on the road at some cold weather teams?
It's weird because like the answer should probably be the 3 games in 10 days because I don't really think it matters what the opponents are. That just sucks. But the way that they scheduled it, the Texans will be on the same amount of rest as you. I am not a believer in the Steelers, so they don't particularly terrify me. And I don't know. I guess I'm not fearful of Cleveland other than the sense that I know they'll have a really good defense until Deshaun Watson proves he has any ability at all. It's like, it feels like it could be a worse stretch of teams, even though they squeezed them into 10 days. Look, the true test for them is they can either front run themselves for, wow, this team's getting the number 1 seed. They're winning the division. They're the best team in the AFC again through 4 weeks, or they can go back to the we got to do some stuff in the drawing board. And this is going to be another, let's figure ourselves out as the season goes along. I would never rule them out, right? Yeah. But Baltimore, Cincinnati, a decent Atlanta team who won a lot of games last year and now has a better quarterback, and the Chargers on the road, that's a tough start to the schedule. That's probably the most difficult 4-game stretch that exists anywhere. Because when you've got the 49ers, you're coming off a bye, Raiders, Bucks, Broncos, whatever. So unless you're going to be like, well, what about like a divisional game and then the Bills or those last stretch? The most difficult stretch is the game of the first 4. If for some reason they pull out of that and they are 4-0, well, then people are going to start talking 4 games into the season about going undefeated. Like that's what could happen there. Now, you go 2-2, who cares? You're probably fine. You're going to beat the Saints, and then your schedule starts to lighten up a little bit, I think, from a difficult opponent standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a stretch there of some road games that you've got, and got the bye week in there, which will certainly help against the 49ers. You got those 2 back-to-back games against the Bucks and the Raiders starting November. That I think that's pretty favorable. I don't look at this. I mean, okay, you play the Bills, the Panthers, and the Raiders. I mean, is the Panthers a trap game? I don't think that's a terribly scary trap game. I mean, even if you don't show up, I think you can. If you're the Chiefs, you can probably show up with your C game and still win that one.
They couldn't even find a coach who wanted the job. They had to offer a no-name coach 6 years. There's no way they're going to be good.
They got some work to do. I mean, there's no doubt they got some work to do before. But even before that 10 games, that 3 games and 10-day stretch that we're talking about, the Texans don't have much of an advantage. They play at noon on the previous Sunday, just like the Chiefs do. Chiefs are at Cleveland. the Texans are at home versus Miami. A little advantage there in that they don't have to travel on that
Sure.
Sunday.
But they have to
But
travel for the game, so
yeah, I mean, and I mean, it's a 6 day stretch. I mean, that's not nearly as hard to me as the 4 day turnaround tour for the Steelers on Christmas Day. And hey, I mean, let's face it. I mean, that I think is going to be more difficult for the Chiefs. I mean, if we're talking about the Chiefs maybe not showing up with the greatest of effort last year at home against the Raiders on Christmas, how's it going to be going on the road against Pittsburgh? Now, I also saw the Raiders team that I thought was going to roll over on Christmas Day, because who wants to be, playing on the road
yeah.
on a Monday on Christmas? And the Raiders took it as we're going to go in there and we're going to knock their heads off. If the Chiefs have that same kind of rally, I mean, they won't have any problems in Pittsburgh, but
No.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in December. It's way too early to know where those two teams' heads are going to be at.
By the way, for just like this is like the only things you can talk about when it's the Chiefs. I would call you kind of a joke if you're talking about it with a lot of other teams, but with the Chiefs, it's realistic. From the number one seed perspective, something that I think does matter for a team that, again, wants rest. Doesn't stop them from winning a Super Bowl. It's not like that. The number one seed's never coming out of the North. It's too good. I think they'll beat up each other too much. It's not realistic. So I think you're down to just the three divisions. In the East, you're like, oh, I mean, that's a tough division too. I mean, the Bills have no one at wide receiver. Miami gave them a good challenge last year. Is the one seed really coming out of there? I tend to lean no. Okay, so we're down to the South and the West in my mind. South is way tougher than it used to be. They don't have a laughing stock team. They don't have a doorstop unless Will Levis is just the worst. They don't have they're not a complete pushover team in the division. The Texans, a team that you would think who won the division last year, could be fighting you for the number one seed because they get to spend all their money on weapons and they got the rookie quarterback on the rookie deal. The thing is advantage. Their schedule during that Chief stretch is awful, Matt. They have to be on the road against the Jaguars on the 1st. They get a bye, but then they have to play Miami, go on the short week to take on the Chiefs, and then go on the even shorter week to take on the Ravens. Like, for a team, like if the Texans for some reason have the advantage on you in the number one seed, are they going to maintain it through that stretch? If I were them, that's worse. That's worse than the Chiefs' first 4 games, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think
Chiefs,
you're right about that.
Dolphins, that stinks. Or yeah, that's a tough stretch for the Texans. A team that's literally been good once and played a last place schedule. I mean, you want to talk about it always goes the same way. It's always kind of easy to pick the teams. You're just like, all right, I don't think the Texans are going to make the postseason. They're going to finish 8-9 or 9-8 because welcome to a first place schedule. It's not fun. It's a very big wake up call for a lot of teams. Some can handle it. The Bills have been taking a first place schedule for 4 straight years, won their division. The Chiefs, I don't know how long they've been doing a first place, 9 years or whatever it is now. What are they up to? Consecutive division titles, Matt?
7, right?
7.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 28. Sorry.
Even I said 9, so I was just prematurely giving him this year.
How quickly I'll forget how many division titles it is on a row. You just
honestly, they seem so inconsequential because now I'm counting Super Bowls. I don't really care. The division title game, it was like Kansas caring about winning the Big 12 in basketball. It mattered because they only really had 1 title during that time. If they had won 3 titles during that time, they wouldn't have made nearly as big of a deal about, look how many times we've won the Big 12. I don't care how many times the Chiefs have won the AFC West. Like, how many Super Bowls you got? Are you going to another one this year? Or are you getting that ring? I'd barely be surprised if they hung up a banner anymore for one AFC West. I don't know that. Does that move the needle for them anymore, Matt? I don't think so.
They still put the banners in the indoor facility, but I think it's just because they also have a lot of room.
Yeah. Slightly different. No, I keep looking at the schedule trying to decide if there's another 4-game stretch that I think is more difficult than that. And no, I think their biggest challenges are they got to go through an early bye week, which is going to wreck them late. And they got to play a 10-game, those 3 games in the 10-game stretch, and that stinks. Other than that, having to play cold weather after cold weather after cold weather, it'll probably stink at the moment, Matt, because week 11 on, they might play a below freezing game every week 11 through the rest of the season. It's possible with November in Buffalo, but that'll only service them later because they'll likely get home games. I was always confused. Were you, I guess I'll ask you this now. I couldn't understand why people thought like we're making too big of a deal about the cold weather of Miami. I'm like, are you sure? They're gonna have to come play in like tundra conditions, not just like people are like, how much is the weather gonna matter? A ton.
A
Like
ton.
in like 80-degree weather this entire time.
I mean, and not only, I mean, they were talking about the fact that they're going to turn down the air conditioning in the indoor facilities and simulate it. You can't simulate 4 degrees below zero. I
No.
mean, no, because the different. I mean, even at your best in that indoor facility in Miami when it's 80 degrees outside, you might be able to get it down to 72. I doubt that, but those indoor facilities are not easy to cool down. So
No.
let's just say you were able to get it down there. Let's just be imaginative. Let's just say you're able to get it to 40. We live in Kansas City. We know that 40 and 4 below are two different things.
They could have put him in like the Applebee's deep freeze for like just like installs, and I'm not sure it would have helped, man. I just
I
like,
know. And that team played like a team that didn't want to be in the cold weather.
yes,
They
like
got
they didn't
punched in
want
the
to be hit,
face.
like they didn't want to do. They never looked comfortable in that game for even a half of a second. See, that's part of the schedule I actually like. Like we were talking about the difficult teams, but Houston and the Chargers having to come to your building in late November and December, or what? Fine by me. Yeah,
Yeah.
send all the warm weather teams to Kansas City in December. You think I'm going to complain about that? No. All the dome teams, all the warm weather teams, all it gets nice and cozy. Yeah, please come on down. That's fine with me. I know
Would
the
you
Raiders on Christmas Day. That was just that's an anomaly.
What would you say if we went through just kind of real quick and gave
Sure.
our at least 5 second Cliff Notes version of what we think the record might be on a week by
Okay.
week?
Yeah.
Okay, you cool with that?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So week one, Ravens. What do you think?
I think they win. I mean, honest to God, if there's a team in the AFC that they've got the number of, I think it's the Ravens. Gotten them one time on a Sunday night football game. That's it. I also just don't think that they're going to fall. They should have won the week one game this year. Andy's pretty good in openers. Harbaugh's great, but I still think the Chiefs win that one.
I last year I mean I thought the Chiefs were obviously I think I would the Chiefs winning pretty much every game in the beginning of the season and didn't always work out real well. I think they're going to be 1-1 after the first 2 weeks. I'm 50-50 on which game it is, but I think that the Ravens might be the more fired up team, ready to come in,
Sure.
get some revenge for the AFC Championship game. And if that's the case, then I mean, I think the Chiefs definitely beat the Bengals because they're going to want to take care of that. So
It's tough
I'm going to
because like,
say, yeah, I'm going to
you
say that they dropped to the Ravens, but they come back in week 2 with the win over the Bengals.
I'll even give them the win against Cincinnati. They do not play well the first month of the season under Joe Burrow. Ever. Like they're just a bad team the first month of the season. I don't know why. There's no real good answer for it. But Joe Burrow is already saying like he's gonna need like treatment on his wrist the entire year. And I don't know, maybe I'm overplaying it, but it's like he's already typically rusty. He's not fully healthy anyway. It's like I think they win that one. Look, the first loss I'll give them, or let's go to the third game. I'll take them against Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta on a Sunday night football game. I
Yeah,
feel
I'm
very
with you there.
comfortable there. Kirk Cousins still in the new install. I'll give them their first loss against the Chargers because I don't think they're going
I'm
undefeated.
putting up the picture of us from the Super Bowl. Sorry.
Oh, look at that. I think they'll lose football games eventually. Road against the Chargers early on. The Chargers have almost gotten them early in the season a couple of times. Probably should have a couple of years ago if it wasn't for a Jalen Watson pick six late into that game. The Chargers had control. So, like, I think they're 3-1 through the first 4-1 through the first 5 because I can't pick them to lose to the Saints. Like, I think they'll start off well. I do. I mean, I think they're a better team at this time this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I'm definitely win over the Falcons at the Chargers.
I'll give
I
them a
mean,
loss. It's fine.
I'm, I mean, I once again, I'm going to end up with them like being 6-1 at the week 7, and I'm not feeling great about
Yeah.
that. So, but you've
That's
got them
fair.
5-0, right? To the Saints.
No, 4-1. I had them losing to
4-1.
the Chargers.
You have them losing to the Chargers.
Yeah, Chargers get them early in the season. That's not all
Yeah,
that uncommon.
I
They're
no,
not gonna win every division game.
I think I'm gonna go with you there. I mean, even though I do think that they might bounce back against the Chargers, Chiefs probably aren't going to go 6-0 against the West again this year. And Harbaugh, that's going to be their first chance. I mean, that's going to be their chance to make a statement game.
I think it's a kitchen sink game for Harbaugh. He's just going to do anything he can to sell out to win it.
Yeah. You've got the Chiefs 4-1 at the bye. I've got them 3-2. I think that's either one. I think is absolutely possible scenario. So
I'd be surprised by the other end. I'd have them, like, if we kept going, I'd have them losing against San Francisco. It's the only team that can go toe for them for most games. It took overtime in the Super Bowl to beat them, and that was a neutral site, not a road game. If you're going to say, hey, they got to face the second best team in the NFL on the road, that's a loss, right? I mean, it's not like a knock. It's just that's a loss typically.
yeah. I mean, but I mean, once again, we had to go back to Andy Reid's history on bye weeks and giving him the advantage. I mean,
and he's never lost to the 49ers. You know that?
And there's that. And Mahomes has never lost to the 49ers, obviously,
That's
either.
Yeah, so, like Mahomes and Andy together, they never lost to him.
Yeah, no.
He's had some iconic moments against the 49ers, as a matter of fact. That's also why, like, sometimes I think eventually you get a team because you're so hungry for it. You eventually just, like, get them once. You're like, finally, we got him. And then you're like, okay, well, either we'll see in the Super Bowl or not. We're not going to sweat about regular season games. Thanks.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and I would never have the guts to say this to Andy Reid's face because he probably just pummeled me into the ground. And I don't believe it's entirely true because I do not believe that Andy Reid sandbags on games, thinking to not put his best out there, for fear of down the road and being able to save it for the playoffs. But then again, at the same time, he kind of does. I mean, I
think what it is, Matt, I think he gets in his head sometimes, especially in the middle of a game. He starts getting a feel for a game. He's like, oh, I can just win this ugly. I don't have to do, like, we're just going to nuts and bolts this thing. And even if it's 17-14 just looks terrible and we've shown nothing, we can win this game. And they don't always win it, but it's like, we can win the game this way. We can just win it gross. And he just starts settling into that in the middle of the game. And I think sometimes it looks like they're not throwing anything at it because he's like, I don't have to. This game's going to be a 3-point game at the end, and I'll just trust that Pat does it, I guess. I don't know what it is. I don't disagree with you because they definitely showed things to San Francisco in the Super Bowl. They didn't show in the regular season.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, he absolutely, I think, uses games and he knows that he may see a team down the road again. He may purposefully not show them something that he wants to run against them that he thinks is going to work, or maybe he puts an element of it in there. But there's no doubt. I mean, but even against San Francisco, I mean, obviously they played some of the greatest hits too, but they did things against the 49ers they hadn't done against anybody all year.
I'd love to give, God, I can't remember who it was. Was it Solak? I can't remember. A good NFL writer, fill in the blank, whoever you think it is, they'd made a really good point about this with Aaron Rodgers. They were talking about why it was a problem with LaFleur in Green Bay. Is that Aaron Rodgers essentially calls his own game and can call his own game. He's very good at it. He knows how to attack opponent in an individual game. But the part of it, this person was making a point out that they miss out on is how sometimes both in a game and in a season, you're setting them up. You're not calling that play at that moment because it's the best play at that moment, but that 20 plays from now, I want to be able to stick it to them, and I need to be able to call this play to do it. And what Aaron Rodgers is doing, which is not wrong in the moment necessarily, but that's costing him from like I'm a quarterback who calls my own plays part, is he's looking at the field and he can see the whole field and he's like, I got to check. There's a better thing to do now, not 20 plays from now. There's a better thing to do right now. And I think sometimes like Andy is good at the counter punch, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And that's why, I mean, I say, I mean, for Andy Reid, usually a season is like a symphony. In that he will run something in week one for the total intents and purposes of running the exact same thing and giving the exact same look in week 12 against somebody else because he knows it's going to work. And if he shows them the look in week one, he shows them what he wants them to see. And then later on, he can run the exact same look with a different element to it, a different direction, a different aspect. And they're going to fall for it because the NFL does, they are that intent on it. I mean, they absolutely are intent on memorizing looks. And Andy Reid loves to do that as far as just giving a team the same look week in and week out, or even, using it in week one and then bringing it back in week 11 for the just intensive purposes of showing you misdirection and going a completely different way. I mean, and there's nobody in the league better at that than him.
Yeah, it matters. I mean, if you're going to play deep into the postseason, then it's even easier to make those decisions. You don't have to make oh God, if I don't get this third down right now in the third quarter, we're screwed for the rest of the way decision. It's an advantage when you're going to be playing deep. Or where were we? Week 8?
I've completely sidetracked us. Yes, we are week 8 and at the Raiders.
I already told you that whichever Raiders game we get to, they're beating them. They're going to make a point. The season after the bus thing, they made a point. They're just going to, and come on, Cinderella's up. Every interim coach I've ever and this nothing against Antonio Pierce.
True.
The interim coach effect is real. They all rally behind their guy. They're like, he's ours. He was in no way prepared to be an NFL head coach, and now he's going to have to do it full time. Before, they could just get off on gusto, and now everybody's going to have tape on him and know his tendencies and know his team's tendencies, and the quarterback's still Aiden O'Connell. So, yeah, I think they win
don't
that
have
one.
a quarterback.
Got him at 2 losses through 8 weeks.
All right, coming back at home, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I'm trying to decide. Like, I don't think they're going undefeated at home. They lose into the Bucs, though. They're interesting. Like, because I actually think they're a good team. I think they're decently coached, and I think Baker Mayfield finally got to be decently coached, so he's an above average quarterback. On home, Monday Night Football, coming off, squeezed between divisional games. You know what? It seems like a weird one, but mark me for a loss there.
All right.
Squeezed between divisional games. You just took on San Francisco a couple weeks before. That just feels like a weird one that gets you. It shouldn't, but it does.
You're convincing me that I probably should take that. I'd already put it down as a win. I'm going to stick with it, even though I think you make a very compelling case that is absolutely a game that can get away from them.
It feels like the one that they lose. I don't know. There's that one feeling of a game every year where you're like, I don't know why you're going to lose this game, but you just are.
That one's got the potential for sure. I may have to circle that and come back to that one. So now we both have it 5-3. So
okay, I've got to beat the Broncos in Week 10 at home. That's a noon game at home.
I don't think the Broncos.
Rookie quarterback at Arrowhead. Okay, sure.
That's the thing. I mean, Sean Payton may be able to do wonders with this team and this quarterback, but I don't know if he can overcome that. So, and then Week 11 at Buffalo.
I mean, they lose this game every year.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it.
Oh, is this the year they finally win the regular season game? You know what it is? Because Buffalo's worse. Buffalo's not winning the division.
Buffalo is worse.
Buffalo's got
problems.
They are spending the least amount of money at wide receiver, I think, in the entire NFL. Or they're like near the bottom. They're below the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are like 25th lowest.
You know, I talked to a radio show in Buffalo this morning, and I can say what they wanted to talk to me about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and I can safely say that the most exciting thing that they heard from me was that I said he is a very good run blocker. So
yeah, so I guess that's
excited about that.
Look, I think honestly, if the Bills are going to win the division again, they're going to have to reverse their policy from last season, which was maybe we should run Josh Allen less. Maybe we should put him at less risk. They're going to have to reverse that policy if they actually want to win the division this year. They replaced a guy who had been a 12 to 1,300 yard wide receiver for the last 5 years straight with Curtis Samuel, a perfectly fine wide receiver, like a 600 yard wide receiver, MVS, and who was that third edition? I don't know. I mean, I guess are they making Khalil Shakir their number one? Like I just think they're worse. And I think defenses eventually failed. The Bills' defense has held on longer than I thought. Like, they've been a consistently good defense longer than I thought most defenses could be. Eventually fall short. So I'll actually give the Chiefs the win on the road in Buffalo.
I'm going to do the Chiefs a favor and Chiefs fans a favor because every year have been loosey with the football, believing that this is the year that the Chiefs get over the Buffalo hump in the regular season and always get beat. So I swear this year I was going to say Chiefs at Buffalo. I am going with Buffalo, so I will stick with it, which means the Chiefs will in fact win that game.
Congrats!
Congrats! Congratulations!
You don't have to spend much time on Carolina, right? That's a win.
I'm assuming, yeah. I mean, Carolina's a win-win, right? Even C effort, Chiefs can win that one.
Raiders for me at home, same thing. I told you they're gonna make a lesson.
I completely agree. So then we are moving on to the Chargers at home.
Okay, so
on Sunday night,
I had them losing the game earlier in the season because I think that the Chargers get them one time this year. And because I think it's only once and I've never seen a team sweep Andy Reid in the regular season, I have to take the Chiefs here on Sunday night. They get a couple of extra days rest. It's late in the game. I still don't know what the Chargers are going to be under Harbaugh. He wins a lot of games, but sometimes it takes him a year or two. So I'll take the Chiefs there.
I'm going to agree with you there too. Then on to Cleveland. We are now in the 3 games in 10-day stretch.
So I don't think it really matters which one you choose, but they're losing one of these 3 games.
Yeah.
I just I don't see a way around it. Honestly, I lean towards it's Cleveland. Good defense, salty enough. They're just kind of annoying pain in the ass. You just came off the Sunday night game. So I'll make that one the loss and the Texans and the Steelers the wins. But I just think they're losing one of those three. Like, they're losing one of those three games. I don't know how you get through a 10-game stretch, 2 of which are on the road in 10 days, coming off a divisional Sunday night game and win all 3. I just don't think it's plausible most of the time.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Even though I feel like Cleveland's due for a step backwards this year because I think they were a little over their heads last year, especially with the quarterback play that they got. They still haven't really figured out who their quarterback is and if it's Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson's not any good anymore. He is going to continue to be an albatross around that franchise.
But you're good enough defensively to win 14-13, you know?
And if he can Joe Flacco them to 13 wins, then congratulations to Deshaun Watson. I'm just not sure that he's good enough to do that.
I think he stinks. He's just not good anymore. He's not a good football player. What is he, like the 18th or 19th best quarterback in the league right now?
I'm not even sure if I'd give him that. I mean, I think he's absolutely the bottom third of the league.
Let's see. On the Chiefs' schedule, now I'm going to try to find the quarterbacks I think are worse than him. I mean, Derrick Carr's been playing better than him, so that's not fair. All right, he's better than Aiden O'Connell. Congrats.
Is he, though?
I think he's better than Aiden O'Connell.
Maybe.
I mean, J.J. McCarthy, you almost give the edge because I've never seen him fail. End of list, I guess.
End of list.
Yeah. I don't think he's better than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson had a better year than him in worse circumstances. All right, so we think they're losing one of those 3 games.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with it being Cleveland too, because on the road, I'm with you. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a little bit of looking ahead to the Texans and Christmas, and I don't know which Browns team is going to show up and who it's going to be. I mean, if by that point Deshaun Watson's been knocked out again and they've got a backup in there, they're probably going to be a better team than they would be with Deshaun. So.
Yeah, that's true, actually. You'd actually prefer that it was Deshaun. So what do we have him going into week 18 then?
We're week 15 right now.
Oh, okay.
I forgot. You're going to give them. Yeah,
I'll give them the next
wins over the Texans, and
because I just think they're losing one of those 3. And if I pick the first one, I think they're beating the Texans and the Steelers.
Yes, and I'm a little bit less confident, but I'm going to do the same thing. So you have them 12-4 going to Denver. I have them 11-5.
Okay. I mean, look, this game always is like, this is the funniest one to pick every year. If they don't play in the game, I guess I'll take it as a loss. And at 13-4, they're probably not playing it, or 13 and yeah, they're
at 12-4. They might be on the cusp of the 1 seed. They might have to play and win.
I'm trying to decide what I think about the other teams in the AFC right now. The problem is I'm not sure anybody's a 13-win team in the AFC. I'm down on the Bills. I think Cincinnati's got its own problems. Cincinnati's the most likely in a weird way, but then they play in an incredibly difficult division. So it's got to be like the Ravens have a special year or Cincinnati has a special year where they like really stick it to their division. And they've all got question marks. I'll give them the win there because I guess I think you probably still have to get to 13 to get a bye in the AFC. I mean, most years would tell you that, right?
Yeah, it would. I mean, you have them winning most of the close games. So in theory, 12-4 might be good enough if they own a tiebreaker.
Yeah, depending on the teams I haven't beaten. I haven't beaten Baltimore and Cincinnati. They might not need that game, but
yeah, if they got to win over the Texans too. I mean, Buffalo would be
like Carson Wentz in that game anyway,
Buffalo. Yeah,
Carson Wentz can take it to Denver for a game.
Tell you what, I don't want to bash my guy Blaine, but Carson Wentz is an upgrade at the backup quarterback.
Of course he is.
So
my bigger question is that he's been run out of town for being a horrid teammate everywhere else, but he also was trying to be a starter everywhere else. Yeah. If he gets to just be comfortable backup, man, maybe it's not as big. It's not as contentious,
That is true, and there's nothing to be contentious about in Kansas City. All you do is win football games and go get rings. So
yeah, it's pretty
nice.
What's
to complain about there?
Carson Wentz already got 1 ring sitting on the bench. He can go for 2.
Well, we got him go. I think we're probably that close between being a coin flip. You could have them 13-4 and 12-5 just as easily as I've got them 12-5 and maybe 13-4.
I'd say it's right in that range. Look, and their win total is 11.5, like it is every year. They've only won less than 12 games one time. It was last season. Yeah, and I already told you I think they're a better team than last year. So unless Rashee Rice's suspension ends up being 10 games, which could alter my opinion on this, I'm taking a shot that part of this is that I think Rashee Rice's suspension, or I'm hoping Rashee Rice's suspension will be a normal amount of games, not 2/3 of the season amount.
Yeah. Before we go, do you have time for a couple of questions from some of the folks in the timeline here?
Sure.
A couple of good ones, and this one I think we talked about a little bit. But Brandon's question, that's not the one I wanted to go to. Brandon, I'm sorry about that. You had one later that your thoughts on the sleeper team that the Chiefs might slip up against. I mean, we've talked about
Bucks.
a couple of games that they might fall, but I think the Bucks are yours, isn't it?
Yeah. They're just like, I don't know what it is. It's probably Matt, because you and I started covering Chiefs together around the same time. So like, if you know, Matt covers the Chiefs. He goes and does all the press conferences, sits there. I used to do that too. So for like 4 or 5 years, I would like be at the facility 6 days a week and talk to all the coordinators and the coaches. And if you look at the Chiefs schedule enough, everybody knows that there's just like a, what the hell happened here game. Like, well, what are we doing here? And the Bucks are not such an embarrassing team that you're like, what went wrong here? But it's like, they're just salty enough. It feels like you're at home, so you're supposed to win it. Baker beat Mahomes in one big game before, and he'll just do it again for no reason. They won't go anywhere with it, but he'll just get him. I don't know. It just has that feeling. I feel like that's a good sleeper team. Because if it's not them, I don't know. You have to really believe Russell Wilson's a better quarterback, and December is going to come get the Chiefs for the Steelers.
But I even think, in that situation, I mean, I'm not even sure that, going to Pittsburgh late in the season and Mike Tomlin and his usual wizardry, I don't even think that would be that bad of a loss.
No.
Because they're going to be a 500 team at that point. So, I mean, it's Mike Tomlin, for crying out loud.
Short week on the road, Mike Tomlin, he does weird stuff. He'll win those games lots of times.
The Bucks, I think, is a really, really compelling one. I'm going to say, even though obviously I picked the Chiefs to win the game, I'm going to say Atlanta, because if the Chiefs, especially if the Chiefs are 2-0 after the Ravens and the Bengals,
and then
it would be so Atlanta. Chiefs to just sleepwalk through Atlanta and think that they can just absolutely beat them. But the other one that is really sneaking up on me that might be the one, tell you what, Derrick Carr every once in a while wakes up against the Chiefs and has a heck of a game.
I was thinking that Thursday night game, Matt. God, was this like 2018 maybe?
Yeah,
he played incredible in that game.
He's had some incredible
deep passes. He played amazing in that game.
He's had some incredible games, and some of them have been at prime time. I mean, the Raiders had their one game that they came into Arrowhead and pushed the Chiefs around on a Sunday afternoon once, but a lot of his better performances when he's had a chance to beat the Chiefs or has beat the Chiefs have been in night games. So that's a tricky one. I mean, and I'm not the biggest Derek Carr fan in the world, but he can every once in a while wake up and scare you.
No, he can. He's just like, that's what makes him a league average quarterback, is that he can get hot. Doesn't mean he will, but he can.
Finally tuned, asking, last year Chiefs had a better record on the road. What about this year?
That's usually an anomaly. But I'll say this: they do face the Bengals and the Ravens and the Texans, that have been 3 of the better teams in the AFC, all at home. So you'd think that there's some potential losses there, but I still think they have a better home record, don't you?
I think so too. I mean, they shouldn't have the pitfalls that they did last year. Being a team like the Chiefs and having as bad a record at home as they did, and being a better team on the road, is very weird. I mean, it is an anomaly. I mean, they are equipped for it because Patrick Mahomes doesn't care. He is immune from road noise and anything else. I mean, he just shuts it all out. So that offense generally is not going to struggle. So it should be different this year. But once again, I mean, it can come back to just when you catch teams, where you're playing them. They do have a difficult home schedule. I mean, there's no doubt. Ravens and Bengals right out of the bat will absolutely tell you that. Texans are a tough team. Obviously, the AFC West teams are always going to give you a hard fight. Yeah, they've got some.
Their schedule's easier on the road. It is. It's easier on the road. But they're just. They got a lot of those home games later in the year when it's cold. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like that repeats itself 2 years in a row very often if you're Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean, your 2 toughest road games are obviously the 49ers and the Bills.
Yeah.
What's the third? I mean,
Pittsburgh in December is not fun.
That might be the toughest.
Yeah, the Chargers, that's a de facto home game. So, like, probably Pittsburgh.
Too scary. I mean, Pittsburgh might be it. Yeah. And, Pittsburgh was a 500-ish team last year.
That's a lot on rep. I'll give them that. Look, that's a lot on reputation, but they've earned it. They've got plenty of history to suggest they're a salty, cold weather team in December that you don't want to mess around with.
Yeah. Yep. Chris is asking, overall, it is a fair schedule, but a fast start is needed. Do you agree?
Okay, so for the Chiefs, typically the answer to that has been no. But because of the early bye and because of that schedule we talked about in December where they face all of those extra games in such a short time period, I actually do think that they need to have at least a slightly decent built-up schedule before they get to the middle of it. Like, I don't think they want to start going like 1-3 against the Ravens, the Bengals, the Chargers, the Falcons. Those are four, like those are three playoff teams. Or did the Chargers make the playoffs last year? No, they blew it. That was 2 years ago. They blew it to the Jags.
Yep.
All right. So 2 playoff teams in that early going. And then 2 teams that were like the Chargers stunk. They had 5 wins. But the Falcons were what felt like a quarterback away from competency. So, like, I don't know, just enough to maybe don't screw it up too bad. But I don't think they have to get to a super fast start, Matt. Just like better than they have in some of those down years.
Yeah, I mean, I have them going 3-2. I mean, I think that's the worst that they should do.
Yeah.
If they're 2-3 going into the bye week, I mean, there's going to be some consternation. I mean, certainly fans won't be happy. I know the guys in the room won't be happy. I mean, they would not want to be 2-3, especially if they were like to lose the Saints going into the bye week.
Yeah.
But once again, I mean, last year, and maybe I'm just giving way too much credence to last year's team, but I mean, this really is a team that I mean, if they don't wake up until January, it's not a concern. All they need to do clearly is make the playoffs, because even that one extra game that you may have to play or going on the road an extra game, it doesn't bother this team.
No.
I mean, it's irrelevant.
If last year was any indicator, the fact that that was the most difficult path available. Like, you could not have chosen a worse one, including San Francisco at the end. You're like, okay, you only get one home game. You got the 3 most difficult AFC opponents. And then congratulations, the prize is what was consensus, the best team in the NFL the entire season. So congrats. And the Chiefs won all 4 of those games and won the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have a hard time thinking they can do that every year. I've always said, like, I never understood, like, I want to, even when the Chiefs weren't winning Super Bowls, I want to beat the Patriots. I'm like, screw that. I want the easiest possible path. I hope the Chiefs this year in the postseason take on the Steelers round 1 and the Titans round. I don't care. I hope it's the worst conceivable teams. Like, I whichever you deem is the worst available playoff teams, I hope it's them. And then I hope some NFC team that has no business being in the Super Bowl's there. Like, I don't think you ever have to apologize anymore for opponents. Nobody's going to ever remember how good a team you beat on the way or how bad.
That is very true. One thing I wanted to ask you before you close, how much are you looking forward to Chiefs and 49ers with Tom Brady in the booth for Fox?
I mean, I hope Tom's good at it. Yeah. I'm curious, at least. I'll say that, because I don't know, man. Between taking the roast and all that stuff, dude, Tom still wants to be the man. And I don't know, you maybe didn't listen to this. Was it God, whose podcast was it that Chuck was on? Charles Barkley was on someone's, maybe it was Shay's, I don't remember, but he was on a podcast recently, and he was talking. Oh no, it was JJ Redick's. It was a really good podcast. I really recommend it. It was JJ Redick's podcast. Shaq was on there, and Chuck was on the week before, but Shaq was on there, and they were talking about the like mourning period when you leave professional sports. And Redick is like, hey, it doesn't really matter what level of player you are. Like, that mourning period exists. And he said, what was the hardest thing for you, Shaq? And he said, I wasn't the man anymore. And he said he felt that way his last year in the league, but he's just like, it was really hard to leave the court, and then no longer were you the guy, the man who had to step up. I feel like Tom's got a big case of that. He so badly wants to be the man. I don't know. I also think Greg Olsen got screwed. I think Greg Olsen's great. I think Greg Olsen's great at the job, and he got bumped down just because they wanted to give Tom a bunch of money.
And they really took $7 million off his salary?
Mm-hmm. That's messed up.
That's just messed up.
The second the streaming partner offers him the job. Netflix is going to give him a gig, and he's going to dip so fast.
I mean, I can get having a contract that bumps you down if they hire somebody that, bumps you down on the ranking and everything because you're not in the high profile game anymore, but that still seems pretty harsh.
Yes.
And he's good. Really good. He's probably going to be better than Tom is this year. I mean, Tom's just going to be a novelty. Yeah. I don't know. I'm with you. I mean, I don't know how good he's going to be because, I mean, not everybody's good at this. And obviously, I guess they feel pretty comfortable, but I feel like there's plenty of reasons to believe that Tom might be pretty bad at it.
Yes.
I mean,
I think he might try too hard to be as good of a personality as Peyton Manning is. And most people aren't that natural. Most people don't have it that naturally. Some people have to work a lot harder at it. I do think this. He'll always get the first year bump, just like Tony Romo did. He has scouted every single one of these teams. He
Right.
knows every little stupid, tiny little baby detail about them. So he will have insight. Other people won't. And other people haven't because of how long he's viewed the game. 3 years from now, will he keep like grinding tape? I don't know. Like, right? That's what happened to Romo. He stopped watching it the way he was watching it when he was practicing. But you also kind of have to be like naturally charismatic, and it's tough. And you're the sidekick in this scenario. What you say is not the most important thing. Romo still struggles with that. He stomped all over a Chiefs game-winning Super Bowl call because he couldn't just let Nance have it.
Yep. And one thing, I mean, players often have a hard time doing this, and that's why some of them work and some of them don't, is that, you've got to just say what you're seeing and don't try to be anything more than that. I fear that Tom is going to probably go out there and try to Seinfeld it and just be cracking jokes and trying to make fun of everything. And that's not going to play. And I don't think you're going to let him get away with that because he's going to get plenty of coaching. They're going to do simulated games and all of that. So I assumed that by week 1 that they will have beaten all the bad habits that he might develop out of him if he's coachable. And certainly he should be coachable. I mean, Bill Belichick coached him, so
he was coached for a long time. You'd think he'd be good at it.
Exactly. Well, Cody, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this and joining me for this tonight. It has been a blast. Everybody, if you want to blame anybody for me having a YouTube channel and doing this now, or if you like it, you can credit it back to Cody because he was the first person to put me on the radio back in the day, back on 1510. We were every single week of 2016 talking about how in the world did the Chiefs get Tyreek Hill in the 5th round? This guy's like a first-round draft pick.
That was it. Oh, yeah. And plus, they were like relevant for the first time in a long time. We were probably like hyped up about regular season Monday Night Football wins. They were probably like 3 primetime games back then, Matt.
It wasn't as many as now. Now it's a whole new world. Now
it's a little different.
We have a noon Sunday kickoff. We don't know what to do with ourselves.
No, honestly, I still like those. I don't care what people say about Red Zone. I like a good Sunday noon kickoff.
And that's one of the things I want to ask, Charlotte, when we have our interview is just, the being cognizant of the fact that Kansas City is not New York. It doesn't have everybody within a subway ride of the stadium. There are plenty of people who want to go see Chiefs games for whom it's a 3, 4, 5, 8-hour drive. Yeah. And can't do that on night games, on a Monday night game or a Thursday night game. Maybe it's easier to do it on a Friday night, Black Friday. I mean, I guess we'll find out, but
we will, but people always show up to Arrowhead. Good news is if they don't want to come here, Chiefs fans will. So
they will travel. Well, Cody, thank you very much. I appreciate you so much for joining us tonight, answering some questions, and hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
Of course. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Cody. And for everybody else, just a couple of quick reminders. I mentioned that Nick and I, for 41 is the mic on Sunday, we are going to have Charlotte Carey, who is one of the executives in the NFL scheduling office. She's going to be joining us to talk about how the schedule all came together and how it affects the Chiefs, how everything was just kind of put together and from a very Chiefs-centric standpoint. So really looking forward to that. That will be our Sunday episode for this week, and obviously next week we'll be back for the regular Tuesday Q&A. Appreciate everybody joining us. Have a great night and a great week, and we will see you back on 41 is the mic and the YouTube channel here on Sunday with Charlotte Carey.